Hello, everyone. Welcome to Inconvenient Truths. I'm your host, Jennifer Zeng. If we are going to make a list of the most powerful men on earth or of the men who have the greatest abilities to change the world, I think Xi Jinping will be definitely at the top of the list. So, to understand what kind of person Xi Jinping really is really an important matter for us. However, we can't get this kind of information from any media reports. But today, I will share with you a true Xi Jinping through the eyes of one of his former drinking buddies. This drinking buddy is Professor Yuan Hongbin, who escaped China in 2004 and lives in Australia now. When I was in Australia, I often attended events together with him. This is a joint book launch event for him and me in 2005 in Melbourne. We both talk about our books and did a book signing for our readers. So I was very familiar with him and I feel that I can still trust what he says now, although I haven't talked with him for many years since I left Australia in 2011. Anyway, in two YouTube shows, Yuan Hongbin told three stories about Xi Jinping around 1987. She was only about 34 years old then and was the vice mayor of Xiamen City in Fujian province. Yuan was about 1 year older than Xi Jinping and was a teacher at Peking University. They were drinking buddies then. I will talk about how they became drinking buddies later. The first story goes like this. At the dinner table, Yuan Hongbin said the problem with China now is that there are too many people in China, but the quality of the population is not high. It is necessary to comprehensively improve the quality of Chinese people. And Xi Jinping immediately objected, saying that China's population is not too many, but rather not enough. Yuan Hongbin was very surprised to hear this and asked Xi, "Why do you say so? China is already the world's #1 most populous country." Xi Jinping said, "Don't you understand? China would need 4 billion people to be able to manage the world." Yuan Hongbin said she sounded very serious when he said this. So that was the first story. The second story happened when Xi Jinping, Li Shulei, and Yuan Hongbin drank and had a meal together. Li Shulei is currently the head of the publicity ministry or the propaganda ministry of the CCP. He's also a member of the Politburo. He's 11 years younger than Xi Jinping and was only 23 years old then. He was a doctoral student in the Department of Chinese Language and Literature at Peking University at that time. So when they drank together, they somehow talked about the Korean War. They talked about the Battle of Kosen Reservoir or the Battle of Lake Changjin. Actually, just yesterday, that's on April 27th, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol also mentioned the battle in his speech at the U.S. Congress. In 2011, the CCP invested heavily to produce a propaganda movie called The Battle at Lake Changjin. This movie portrays the CCP's so-called Chinese People's Volunteers as heroes who were willing to be frozen to death to win the battle. The CCP's narrative about the Korean War has always been that the CCP defeated the US in the war. Otherwise, the US and South Korea would have already invaded China, and the CCP saved China from being invaded by the US, etc. Anyway, back in 19 1987, when Xi Jinping, Yuan Hongbin, and Li Shulei talked about this war, the mainstream view was about the battle at Lake Changjin was the same: how heroic the CCP army was. A whole battalion froze to death in the snow, but they still maintained a charging posture towards the front. That was an honor of the Chinese army and was worth being remembered by history. However, Yuan Hongbin didn't agree. He said that the former commander of the CCP's Ninth Army, Song Shilun, who was in charge of the battle at Lake Changjin, should be brought to a military court for trial. Also, Mao Zedong, as the chairman of the Central Military Commission of the CCP, should bear significant responsibility for this because they sent 150,000 soldiers to fight in the severe cold without proper winter clothing, which was equivalent to a massacre of their own army. To use severe cold to massacre one's own soldiers is a crime against humanity. Turning such a crime into glory is even more unforgivable. Yuan also said if he were a soldier, he would have shot Song Shilun to death, etc. And then guess what Xi Jinping said after he heard Yuan Hongbin's points? His first sentence was, "The kind-hearted should not be in charge of the army." Then he said, "Yuan Hongbin, you are like a woman. You can't be a soldier. You are not a true soldier. If not for the price paid by so many who froze to death, China's army would not have won the glory of defeating the America S division, and there would not have a victory that forced the American troops to withdraw. Through the Korean War, China finally gained its pride and status in the world, and so on." Yuan Hongbin was very angry and wanted to talk back, but Li Shulei kicked him underneath the table and indicated that he should not insist. So Yuan Hongbin stopped. After they left the dinner table, Li Shulei said to Yuan Hongbin, "This person may have great achievements in the future because he is ruthless and heavy-handed." Yuan Hongbin said that was the first meeting between Li Shulei and Xi Jinping. Later on, the two gradually started to communicate more with each other. Later, under the support of Wang Zheng, the then vice chairman of China, Li Shulei became the vice president of the Central Party School of the CCP and maintained a good relationship with Xi Jinping. He is now a close confidant of Xi Jinping too. So this is the second story about Xi Jinping. The third story happened when Yuan Hongbin, Xi Jinping, and another CCP official called Bai Enpei were drinking together at the internal restaurant of the Central Party School of the CCP. Let's first talk about who Bai Enpei is. Bai Enpei was born in 1946, so in 1987, when he drank with Xi Jinping, he was 41 years old. At that time, he was the party secretary of Yan'an Prefectural Committee in Shanxi City. You know, in China, a 地区 or prefecture is an administrative division that is between a province and a city. At that time, Bai Enpei was the secretary of the Yan'an Prefectural Committee in Shanxi Province, and Xi Jinping was only the vice mayor of Xiamen City and a member of the standing committee of CCP's Xiamen City Party Committee. This is to say, Bai Enlai's rank was higher than Xi Jinping then. That night, all three of them drank a little too much, and somehow they started talking about Mao Zedong. First, Xi Jinping highly praised Mao Zedong's remarks on one occasion, saying that Mao Zedong had openly proposed at an international communist conference to fight a nuclear war with the United States. The Soviet Union would provide nuclear weapons, and China, that is Mao Zedong and the CCP, would send out 2,000 or even more divisions, bring the U.S. to the East Asian continent, enter China's territory, and fight a nuclear war with the United States. Mao Zedong said at the time that even if China paid the price of half of its population's lives, with millions of people left, it would be worth it as long as they could welcome a communist victory. Finally, Xi Jinping said, if only Stalin could be replaced with Mao Zedong. Xi Jinping also said, when people die, they become nothing but a piece of rotten meat. But if they possess the power to destroy their enemies and create a history, why not make use of it? When Xi Jinping talked to this point, Bai Enpei couldn't bear it anymore and began to oppose him. Then Xi Jinping said, I'm not saying that others who have died are just a piece of rotten meat. If I, Xi Jinping, die, I will also be just a piece of rotten meat. So if I have power, I will definitely create history. That day, because they had all drank too much, Xi Jinping and Bai Enpei ended up in a fierce physical fight, tearing up and struggling with each other badly. And Yuan Hongbin had to intervene to stop them from fighting with each other. In the end, Xi Jinping said to Bai Enpei, wait and see. Someday I will make you wish you were dead. So that was in 1987. You guess what Bai Enpei's fate was later on. In 2016, nearly 30 years after his argument and fight with Xi Jinping, Bai Enpei was sentenced to a suspended death. This is Bai Enpei appearing on TV to confess his crimes. He was the first CCP official to be sentenced to a suspended death sentence for corruption, so it caused a great sensation at the time. Yuan Hongbin said, is Bai Enpei corrupt? Of course, he's not a good person, but there are many corrupt officials in the CCP who are much more corrupt than he is. Why did he become the first person to be sentenced to a suspended death penalty? It is because Xi Jinping once vowed to make him suffer a fate worse than death. A person who is sentenced to a suspended death penalty has to spend his whole life in prison, which is a fate worse than death. So Xi Jinping did what he said he would do. Yuan Hongbin said that he usually never repeats private conversations in public because of his personal moral principles. However, he's sharing these three true stories now because the world urgently needs to understand Xi Jinping's true character. Yuan Hongbin said that General MacArthur was a famous commander and a military strategist, and he was very remarkable. However, he misjudged Mao Zedong back then. He believed that China could not send troops to Korea because China had no navy or air force. And how could they send troops? Sending troops would result in significant and extremely tragic casualties. Therefore, he reasoned that China could not send troops, and Mao Zedong would not send troops. Why did such a great commander and intelligent strategist like MacArthur make a mistake? It was because he was thinking from a rational perspective when it came to Mao Zedong. He didn't know what Mao Zedong was entirely irrational in his strategic decision making. So why did Mao Zedong have to send troops to Korea? First of all, he was laying a foundation for himself to become the leader of the international communist movement after Stalin. He wanted to use this bloody war and the sacrifice of countless Chinese people to establish his position on the order of the further leader of the international communist movement. The second reason was to make internal power adjustments among his generals through this war. At that time, the CCP had just defeated Chiang Kai-shek and Lin Biao and Su Yu were the most outstanding commanders. However, their outstanding military achievements could pose a threat to Mao Zedong's power. So, through the Korean War, Mao Zedong took away Lin Biao and Su Yu's military power and sent Peng Dehuai, who had the smallest army, to Korea to control the army and complete the internal power adjustment. The third reason was a more despicable one. Mao Zedong wanted to use the Korean War to eliminate the tens of thousands of the Nationalist Party troops who had surrendered and defected to the CCP. Although these people already surrendered to the CCP, Mao Zedong did not trust them, but he could not directly kill them. Through the Korean War, Mao Zedong achieved his goal to eliminating these people. How could MacArthur have imagined that Mao Zedong would want to use the Korean War to eliminate the CCP's own troops? Yuan Hongbin even suspected that not providing the 150,000 Chinese soldiers with warm clothing and sending them into the icy battlefield was itself a major conspiracy. MacArthur made such a judgmental mistake, and that's why he was caught off guard at the beginning of the Korean War. Therefore, the international community cannot make the same mistake about Xi Jinping again. The dictators of totalitarian regimes are always irrational when making strategic decisions. The strategic decisions of the CCP dictatorship rely on the dictator's personal passions, personal political ideology, and personal political desires rather than rational thinking. Yuan Hongbin said that Xi Jinping is a stupid version of Mao Zedong. He's not as cunning as Mao Zedong, but more stubborn, more aggressive, and more stupid. He also more foolishly believes in what he calls passion. However, what the world sees is a false Xi Jinping, which is a carefully crafted and packaged lie. The world cannot see the real Xi Jinping behind the iron curtain that is tightly guarded by the CCP. It is worth noting that Yuan Hongbin revealed this at the end of 2020. At that time, he said that Xi Jinping had a desire and ambition to erase all other CCP leaders between Mao Zedong and him and to make history transition directly from Mao Zedong to Xi Jinping. Today, more than 2 years later, this has already been achieved and is better than what Xi had wished. In my show on March 27th, I talked about how in the CCP's new State Council work rules that was released by China's new Premier Li Qiang, all previous Communist Party leaders were deleted from the general principles. Even Karl Marx, whom the CCP respectfully refers to as our old ancestor, was deleted. Mao Zedong was deleted too. So finally, let me talk about how Xi Jinping and Yuan Hongbin became drinking buddies. Yuan Hongbin said in 1987, a faction within the CCP led by Deng Xiaoping deprived the then General Secretary of the CCP, Hu Yaobang, of his power through a coup. Xi Jinping's father, Xi Zhongxun, was one of the only two officials in the CCP's high ranks who did not follow Deng Xiaoping's will to purge Yuan Hongbin. Since Hu Yaobang was a reformist within the CCP, many intellectuals, including Yuan Hongbin, respected him. Some teachers at Peking University wanted to gain power by infiltrating the upper circles of the CCP and restoring Hu Yaobang's position as general secretary through another coup, so they actively worked towards this goal. Since Xi Zhongxun did not participate in the purge of Hu Yaobang, he was suppressed by Deng Xiaoping, which caused him great mental stress and even led to a mental breakdown. Therefore, Xi Jinping, who was working in Fujian province at the time, frequently returned to Beijing not only to visit his father, but also to pursue his own career path. He often had meals and drinks with the so-called second-generation Red in Beijing to build relationships, as we all know that in China, relationships are more important than anything else. There was one second General Red member who did not like drinking, so Yuan Hongbin, who had a good alcohol tolerance and liked drinking, would accompany Xi Jinping in drinking on his behalf. So that's how Yuan Hongbin and Xi Jinping became drinking buddies. Well, these were the stories of Xi Jinping in 1987. We Chinese people have a saying that you can know a person's personality when a kid is only 3 years old. So I guess what happened when Xi Jinping was 34 also reflects his true character and true thoughts. From the three stories, we learned that he has a vision to manage the world and to become a great communist leader who is even greater than Mao. Based on what has been happening in China in recent years, we can also see that Xi Jinping is indeed taking China to Mao's time. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and double check if you are still subscribed if you are already a subscriber. If you like my content, please spread my channel and videos or go to my website at jenniferzengblog.com. That's jenniferzengblog.com. Sign up for a membership or make a donation to support my effort. Thank you.